Hello and welcome to the Nexus Mountain Network. My name is Chad Hawley and today's special guest is Hal Weatherman. The Nexus Mountain Network is a social network for Christians to connect together, learn together, and achieve together God's purposes outside of the four walls of the church in society. If you want to join thousands of Christians with like-mindedness, you can download the free Nexus Mountain Network app and you can connect. You can use its capabilities like Facebook, LinkedIn, podcasting, course creation, and so much more. Let's get to our guest. Hal is the Republican nominee for the office of Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina. He's the founder and president of the Electoral Education Foundation, which advances election integrity. Interesting topic we'll get to. He was the chief of staff for the former Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest and former U.S. Representative Sue Myrick. He's an author, he's a husband, he's a father, and he's a Christian. Hal, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So we are super thrilled with what you're doing. It's a real inspiration for Christians to get out there and actually make a difference in the world. I normally start my show by saying, hey, tell us a little bit about yourself, but I want to talk about something hot off the press. And just today, it was announced that North Carolina made a decision regarding election with Robert Kennedy Jr. and keeping him on the ballot. So let me just start there in North Carolina and say, why would someone do that?
Well, I think, probably from a partisan standpoint, now that Kennedy has dropped out of the race, he would occupy a ballot spot that probably would take away some votes from one side or the other. So, depending on what side people are on, they would want him on the ballot or they would not want him on the ballot. The interesting part would be, I'm fine with him still being on the ballot. It's awful late in the ball game. And so appreciate him doing what he did and supporting Trump. But if you're going to take him off the ballot or, if you're going to allow him to stay on the ballot, I guess is what I'm saying, then should we allow Biden to stay on the ballot?
Right.
So, I think both sides will try to game the system as best they can for whatever advantage that ultimately the courts or, the proper authorities will decide it. How much that impacts my race, I'm the top of the down ballot at Lieutenant Governor. I don't know. I have found in the past that when you try to game the system, it never really works. So, he was going to be on the ballot. If he's on it now, great. If he's not, fine. We'll just move on.
Okay. So you have a background, obviously, as founder and president of doing work with advancing election integrity. Yeah. This is a big, big deal. And it didn't always used to be such a big deal. But even in the election in 2020, and what is different? Like, what did we learn from 2020 that we are doing differently in 2024?
So, let me tell you a little bit about the group I do because we have a very limited focus. It's called the Electoral Education Foundation. We're a 501c3 nonpartisan, bipartisan organization. We're focused exclusively on the North Carolina voter rolls. So you almost have to understand our methodology to understand what we do. Okay. The North Carolina Board of Elections, they update the voter rolls basically once a week during non-election season, every Saturday morning, 4 a.m., 5 a.m. During election season, they ramp that up and they'll actually start updating the voter rolls every day. And so, you're talking about a data set of about 8.2 million people. The average person in that file has about 300 lines of code attached to them. So it's a massive file. Wow. In a nutshell, what our group does is whenever the Board of Elections updates their files, we take a digital, it's public record, we take a digital screen grab, I'm simplifying it, of the entire file. We move it over to our server, we archive it. But for our group archiving, there is no historic archive that's out there. We have collected the largest privately held archive data of North Carolina voter history, second only to the Board of Elections itself. And we develop algorithms and, again, use supercomputer, think SQL Server, and we compare updates to updates. And what you do when you do that is you actually shrink the file. We're interested in movements, we call them movements in the updates that have the highest correlation to fraud. We're not claiming there's fraud. We're just simply saying we believe there should be safeguards in the system. And so through our expertise, through our research, we have identified multiple areas in the North Carolina voting system that we think are potential backdoors for fraud, if not closed up. And so we come up with public policy recommendations for the North Carolina General Assembly to close those loopholes. And the analogy would be, I don't need to wait for someone to break into my front door of my house and still be blind before I decide to put a lock on the door. If I know that I've got a vulnerability with no lock on the door, I just need to go ahead and lock that door. And so what we have identified is, that our North Carolina voter system is fairly transparent, in all honesty, in comparison to other states. So that's a plus for them. Okay. But what they lack are what I call redundant fixed points, secondary fixed points built into the system, safeguards that are built into the system. And so it gets really in the weeds very quickly.
Yeah.
We've had some success with the General Assembly to get 4 or 5 of the items that we'd like to get in there corrected, but there's still several more. But I think the difference this time around in North Carolina is we will have, unless the courts step in here at the 11th hour, we will have voter photo ID, which we did not have in 2020. That will be very significant. Makes fraud at the actual ballot box itself very hard to commit, at least in a systematic way. And the other change that they made is, in 2020, they allowed absentee ballots to be counted up to and including 9 days after the election, which I think is absurd. I think most people think is absurd.
Yeah.
In this election, all absentee ballots, other than military ballots, which they will afford a 3-day grace period, which I'm fine with, because they're very easy to trace that they are actually military ballots. But all other absentee ballots or mail-in ballots have to be turned in by close of business on election day. That's a massive security safeguard that they've put into the system.
Wow. So you take preventative measures. So it's not just Republican, Democrat. It's like, hey, we see things ahead of time. Therefore, both sides can't be like, hey, they both want it. They want those results. Then the whole picture ID piece, photo ID, that was new information to me. That's exciting. And so how have you been able to take your learning and help other states, especially like swing states in the nation?
So it's hard to extrapolate what we do to other states, because there is no national election law. Election law is the purview of the 50 states, and you want it that way. Our forefathers wanted it that way, because otherwise, if it were federalized, whoever's in control could basically have a systematic national set of rules that could benefit one side or the other. And so it's hard to do that when it's divided between the states. And so it's hard to extrapolate out from North Carolina, for instance, to Virginia, because they have different laws, different reporting requirements. Like I said, in North Carolina, our system is fairly transparent, meaning like my group is just taking already publicly available data and then analyzing it and isolating certain things. In other states, that data wouldn't even be available publicly. So you really can't take it to the next state. Every state would have to be built. If somebody were trying to emulate what we would do, they would have to actually build it from ground up in that individual state. And it's why we never took it national. I'm not saying we won't take it national. We've had multiple people try to get us to take it national. And we might do that after the 2024 election. We just don't know yet. It's a very expensive thing. I'm a private citizen just like you. I raise the money for EEF, the Electoral Education Foundation. It's several $100,000 annual. I'm doing it not as a labor of love, but I'm doing it as a labor of necessity. I ran the last gubernatorial race in this state, and we lost. It's the only race. I've run multiple campaigns in my career over 27 years. It's the only race I'd ever lost. And I don't claim to be an election expert, but in North Carolina, I'm pretty darn close to one, having run so many races here. And I saw in that race that I'd never seen before, had no one to turn to, not the RNC, not the GOP, no disrespect, but had nobody to turn to. And so I vowed at the end of that race that I would do something that would create a tool so that if anybody else was running, I had no clue I would be running for lieutenant governor at the time. But I just vowed that I would do this for 4 years. I would set something up. I would analyze the data. We would pull together the data that's needed so that if someone finds himself in the same situation that I found myself in back in the day after the election in 2020, I started this nonprofit at 4:30 a.m. the day after the last election, because I'm like, somebody's got to do it. And but it's a lot of work. I have a really good, very small staff that's very well versed in election integrity, and I give them all the credit, really. And I'm more of the support group that raises the funds for it.
That's amazing. That's incredible work. And it speaks to, I think, what we learned a lot in 2020 was we can't just stand by and hope something or someone else does something about it.
That's right.
That is the case. And for you to do that is a great example. For those of you that are watching, you're thinking about doing something about an issue that you are passionate about, take the first step, just like Hal did. And so you said that you weren't even planning on running again, and you didn't even know you were going to be running for lieutenant governor. What changed that you said, oh boy, okay, I'm going to run for lieutenant governor?
About 20 months ago, my wife and I both woke up one morning, and she looked over at me and said, why aren't you running for lieutenant governor? At that time, our current lieutenant governor, Mark Robinson, it was pretty clear he was about to start the ascent up to trying to be the governor. Yeah. And of course, I've run a lot of campaigns, and I've run 2 successful lieutenant governor campaigns before. And so, people start calling and whatnot about, asking, do I want to help them or whatnot. But, when my wife said that to me, I'm like, why are you asking me that? She said, it's just been on my mind a lot lately. And it had actually been on mine. I was just scared to talk to her about it. And so we're believers. So we prayed about it, got our kids to pray about it. I have 3 kids, all teenagers, all believers. My mom and dad are my prayer warriors. I called them up, said, "Can you come, stay with us and pray about it?" And 48 hours later, we just were complete peace, win, lose or draw. This is what we were going to do at this stage of life. And we put certain parameters on the race that we were going to run. To the best of our ability, we would run a campaign that would bring glory to God. Number one, number two, that would bring honor to our family name, and by that I mean not glory to us in any way, but run a campaign we would be proud of. We would be proud of our name too. And then third was, and I know this sounds so counterintuitive, felt called to run a campaign where I tried to connect personally one-on-one with as many people as I could. And the reason why I say that's counterintuitive is I can't meet the 11 million people, almost 11 million people in the state one-on-one. There's not enough time in the day. Right. Nor could I even meet one-on-one the 3 million or so people that I need just to win this race. But that's what we felt called to do. And so the first fruits of our time, of our money, of our labor, of our passion, everything. The first fruits of everything that we do does not go to consultants. It doesn't go to advertising. It goes to fuel my travel around the state. I'm in my campaign bus right now. We have a big gaudy, tacky bus with my name plastered all over it, mobile billboard. And we've been traveling on this for 5 and 6 days a week for 19 and a half months now, traveling the state. I was the only candidate in an 11-man primary field. So we started off, 11 of us were running on the Republican side. I was the only candidate that went to all 100 counties. I went to 35 counties 5 times or more, and I went to 10 counties 10 times or more. And then we stopped counting. And we won that. And but we did have a runoff, so I had to go through a runoff, another 60 days, another $250,000 that I didn't have to burn through. And we continued the travel, and we won that race. We won 99 of the 100 counties in the state, and we won with 75% of the vote. So, I mean, God's been good to us. He's blessed us. We've tried to honor the calling that we felt that he put on our heart to run our campaign a certain way. We're currently up in the polls right now. We've got a great shot at winning this race. Yep. The election is just right around the corner. I don't even know how many days we're down to, but, absentee balloting starts in about a week. One-stop early voting starts in, 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that. And so this will be over before you know it. But we've had a ball. It's hard to travel the state. It's hard. It's a big state. Yeah. But I consider it great joy. I do. And, even when I'm tired, even when I'm, we get home very late sometimes and get up very early the next morning to just keep going. And I've got a great, very small, lean and mean staff. We all share the same values, and we just consider it great joy because what we really get to do is meet with the greatest asset of our state every day, which is our people. And it's awesome. I enjoy it. I love our state. I really do. And it would be my honor. It would be my privilege to serve as lieutenant governor.
You're very believable, and your actions speak louder than your words. Based on what you described, your commitment. I loved how you said win, lose, or draw. And clearly, the other thing that I want people to capture about you is that as hard as you're working, there's grace on you. And you mentioned the word call several times. And so there's usually a correlation between that call and that grace because you're being obedient to what God's called you to do. So let's just hit a couple of the hot topics and just get your opinion on a couple of those things. Yeah. And just so where you're at and what you're feeling, because at NEXUS, we took a big stand in the education system in North Carolina. At one point, our local high school was literally proactively promoting pedophilia, rape, and incest in the school. And we took a stand here. Members of NEXUS actually went to school board meetings. We took a stand. We contacted media, and we had the initiative stopped. So we took action, and we got things done.
Good for you.
You are going to be in a position of great influence. So what do you believe we need to do to take another step within the education system?
Yeah, if I win in North Carolina, the lieutenant governor, by constitution or by general statute, serves both on the State Board of Education for the K-12 schools, but also serves on the State Board of Community Colleges. And so I will have 2 great pedestals to stand on to fight for our values, so to speak, on both of those entities. On the K-12 system, I'm going to start first with the basics. One, I want to secure our schools. Last year in North Carolina, we had 70 in the public school system. We had 70 teachers charged with sexual abuse of children. And so right off the bat, we're clearly not doing a good enough job with the background checks and the vetting of our teachers. And so we need to do that. That's not to cast an aspersion on our teachers, but still 70 is a very large number. Last year we had 13,000 acts of criminal violence committed in a public school classroom. And this is criminal violence. And so, there's a significant amount of parents. I'm a parent of 3. 2 are still in the home. 1's in college. there's a significant amount of parents that first and foremost are pulling out of the system,
Yeah.
in part because they don't feel safe.
Right.
And in today's world, who can blame them? And so, I want to make sure that we have an armed SRO officer or the equivalent in every school, public, private, charter, Christian, doesn't matter, parochial, middle school, elementary, high school, doesn't matter. Our children are the greatest resource that we have, an asset that we have, and they're our future, and we need to protect them. And so that would be number one. Number two would be to fight the so-called woke agenda. It's
Yeah.
everywhere, and it absolutely is infested, if you will, our public school system and multiple institutions, not just the educational system, but concepts like DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, SEL, CRT, critical race theory. I want to get all of that junk out of the classroom. I want to get all politics out of the classroom. I don't want to substitute conservative politics for liberal politics. I want all politics out of the classroom. I'm going to get back to basics: reading, writing, arithmetic, civics, science. I'd love for us to teach financial literacy to a higher degree. I'd love for our kids to graduate high school knowing how to balance. All right. Sorry, I don't know if that was me. Probably me. I'm sitting on the side of the road. We're
Yeah, no
stationed.
problem. Yeah,
So forgive me.
you were just finishing up in education, and we can move
Yeah,
on.
yeah, sure, absolutely.
I'll fix that in editing, so don't worry about it.
All right. Well, I mean, the only other thing I would say is, I'd love to teach cursive again in
Hmm.
North Carolina, and it's not so our kids can write faster or anything like that, even though that's an added benefit. It's that I want future generations of children to be able to read the founding documents of our country in their original script and
Hmm.
not have to interpret it through the prism of some professor that may or may not agree with those founding ideals that our country was built upon. And so, it's all of the above in terms of getting rid of these, I call it the DNA of the woke agenda. It's all these three-letter acronyms. And then the other thing is I want our state to be self-sufficient on a multitude of fronts. But the reason why I want our state to be self-sufficient is so that we can have the financial wherewithal to sometimes say, we don't want this pot of money that you're offering us because we don't like the strings that are attached to it. And that's the sad part. The analogy I use is the drug dealer on the playground. If you watch the drug dealer on the playground, the first round is always for free. And,
Yeah.
for obvious reasons, because once the child's addicted to it, they can lace that thing with anything they want, and you'll take it with a smile on your face. And I would respectfully say that is our state and all the states today. We are addicted to federal funds, not realizing that the liberal left has basically hijacked most of those funding streams. And they've laced it now with the woke agenda, DEI in particular, CRT in particular. And so when you take it, you're basically putting cancer in your system. It metastasizes, it grows, it spreads, and that ideology goes all throughout the system. And next thing you know, you blink and you don't recognize the country you live in.
Yep. Yep.
And so, I want us to be self-sufficient as a state, especially in the educational realm. So we can say, no, we're just not going to take that. We'll do
Yeah,
without.
that's a great description. So my son, he graduated this year. He's 18 years old, and he only had a few classes to take. So he took a different path his senior year, took the classes, but then started a business,
Good for him.
and actually was very successful at it. He learned how to manage money, deal with customers, negotiate, hire other people, and he's making, I say, grown man money. And so it's really phenomenal. And the reason I bring that up is because I saw something on your website that said you want to change the stigma of the trades. I have not seen a candidate ever say that. So why do you say that?
Well, listen, the quickest way for a young man or woman to be the boss man, to be an entrepreneur, the quickest way to make almost guaranteed 6 figures a year, the quickest way to build a business that if you build it right and work it, that you could literally sell for 10 years, 15 years down the road for 7+ figures and retire,
Yeah.
is to work with your hands, is to go into the trades. All our tradesmen and women are either retiring or dying or both. No one's replacing them. Supply and
Yeah.
demand kicking in, and their wages are going massively up. And it's a good career. However, we've put a stigma on working with your hands. And I'm not against college. I have a college degree. My oldest son is in college. I have a master's degree. I'm not against college.
Yeah.
But we as a society, especially here in North Carolina, for generations now, several generations, we have pushed the next generation into a 4-year degree structure where in so many instances they're coming out with a degree in Egyptian poetry. They come out $150,000 in debt and they can't find a job. All the while there's 6-figure jobs out there if you go into HVAC or electrical work or commercial welding, plumbing,
Yep.
whatever floats your boat. And so
Yep.
I want to create a 2-and-2 degree. I want to create an entrepreneurial degree in the trades. And I think, and the goal is to remove the stigma. And what I want to do is for those kids who do want to go to college, I want them to consider going first to one of our 58 community colleges here in North Carolina, get their certification, get their associate's degree in one of the trades, HVAC, commercial welding, whatever. Then transfer to a 4-year degree and get a stripped down degree. They've already decided what they want to do with their life. They want to be an entrepreneur in the trades. So drop some of the foreign language stuff, drop some of the stuff that they're never going to use, and let them get a limited degree in graphic design, marketing, budget, finance, business. Couple that with the trades. And you've basically made an entrepreneur. You've given them all the tools to be a successful entrepreneur, coupled with a skill set, the trades, is going to make them profitable and self-sufficient the rest of their lives. And I think when you do that, then, the child can have their degree from, the young man or woman can have their degree from, NC State or Carolina or ECU or wherever they want to get it from. But they've got a bona fide skill that's tied into the trades. And I just think it's a smart move for us to make. I have a lot of interest in it. There's a lot of people that are interested in doing that.
Yeah, I am. That's very, very, very interesting. Yeah, I too. I have a master's degree too, and I was the only one in my family to ever go to college. And I went not bachelor's, master's, and here I am now going. My kids are. You don't have to go to college unless you have a specific thing that you're going for. Other than that, there's so many ways to make money and grow a business. Okay, I'm going to do the last thing so you can get back on the road. You've been very gracious to your time with your time. An important topic that a lot of people talk about, Christians especially, are talking about this, and this is about abortion. And President Trump has come out and made a statement that he wants to push things back to the state. And then you are in favor of trying to get a North Carolina heartbeat bill, which would change from, I think the current law is 12 weeks, and now that could change it potentially 6 weeks. Would you like to comment on both President Trump's idea and then what you could potentially do for the state of North Carolina?
Well, I think part of it was, court driven to return the power back, in effect, the decision making authority to the states. Obviously, President Trump does believe in that, and that's where we are now. And so it's up to each individual state to set the parameters they want to do. I'm pro-life. I'm not ashamed of that. I want to create a culture of life in North Carolina. I'd love to see us value life more than we do nationwide as well. In North Carolina, abortion was legal up to 20 weeks for many years, and the General Assembly, just this last session, the Republican-led General Assembly got consensus to 12. They got it down to 12 weeks. I am in favor of a heartbeat bill. I believe life begins at conception. I know that culturally, perhaps not all people accept that. But I do think that the vast majority of the people in this country, first of all, the vast majority of people in this world, not to mention in this country, already assume that life ends when the heart stops. Therefore, I don't think it's a huge jump for culture to embrace at this point in time.
Yeah.
Will we at least agree that as a society that we should accept that life begins when the heart starts? Now, I'm a believer. I believe life begins at conception, but I think that would be a reasonable standard for us to go to at this point. Whether or not there's the political will to do that, don't know. Whether a lot of that would just depend on the dynamics of this next race. But I think the important thing is to create a culture of life and to give women in a time of need, in a highly hyper-personal, hypersensitive, obviously life-changing situation for them. They need to feel love. They need to feel compassion. They need to have wraparound services. I'm all in favor providing whatever neonatal pregnancy services a woman needs during that time period. You know, polls have shown that 77% of women who have had an abortion did so because they felt like there was no other option. And then when you drill down in that and start interviewing some of these women, they'll make these decisions in many instances on something as simple as, well, I don't have a reliable automobile. And how am I going to do this with daycare and all this other? There are millions of people, as you know, there are millions of people. There are hundreds of thousands, if not tens of thousands of groups that are around this country, a lot of them faith-based, that would love to talk to those 77% of women and said, there are other options. Let us wrap around. If you need an automobile, let us provide one for you. Let us buy one. If it will save a life, let us do that. There are groups that do that and provide the wraparound services for these women so that they do feel they have another choice. And so, you know, it is a hypersensitive subject, both on the right, both on the left. You know, but I think we're never going to go wrong doing right, and so we need to push for a culture of life where we value the dignity of life. And I think we've missed that. We've lost a lot of that, and in our country, and I want to gain it back.
Well, I wanted to thank you for coming on the show. I've learned a lot from you. I was inspired by you. And for those that are watching from North Carolina, this man deserves your vote. He's getting mine. I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the show. Wow, what fascinating work you're doing. Keep it up. And I hope we connect again outside of this, and you'll be getting my support for sure.
Thank you, Chad. Appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
Good luck out there. Go get them.
All right, we will.
All
Thank you.
right, bye-bye.